The morning sun cast long shadows across the marble floors of Eldoria Castle as Princess Katerin rushed through the corridors, her silk dress trailing behind her. Something was terribly wrong, and she could feel it in every fiber of her being. The servants whispered in corners, their voices falling silent whenever she approached. Even the guards seemed nervous, their usual confident posture replaced by uncertain glances. Katerin had always been close to her older brother, Prince Wylan. They shared secrets that no one else in the royal family knew. They had protected each other through their father's angry outbursts and their mother's long periods of sadness. But lately, something had changed between them, and Katerin couldn't understand what had gone wrong. 3 weeks earlier, everything had been normal. Wylan had taught her how to fence in the castle's training yard, laughing when she accidentally knocked his sword from his hand. They had shared breakfast on a balcony overlooking the kingdom, discussing their dreams for the future. Wylan spoke of becoming a just king who would help the poor, while Katerin dreamed of traveling to distant lands and learning about different cultures. The change began when their uncle, Lord Aldrich, arrived for what was supposed to be a brief visit. Lord Aldrich was their father's younger brother, a man with sharp features and calculating eyes. He had never married and had no children of his own, which made him next in line after Wylan to inherit the throne. Katerin had never liked him much, finding his smile too wide and his compliments too sweet. On the day Lord Aldrich arrived, Katerin noticed her brother becoming distant. Wylan started having private meetings with their uncle that lasted for hours. When she asked him about these conversations, Wylan would simply say they were discussing matters of state that didn't concern her. This hurt Katerin deeply because Wylan had never kept secrets from her before. The situation grew worse when Katerin overheard a heated argument between Wylan and their father, King Theron. She had been reading in a library when their raised voices echoed through the castle walls. Though she couldn't make out every word, she heard her name mentioned several times, along with phrases like dangerous knowledge and protect the crown. That night, Katerin tried to speak with Wylan, but he avoided her completely. When she finally cornered him in the castle garden, his behavior was so strange that she barely recognized him as her brother. His eyes looked tired and worried, and when she asked him what was wrong, he told her that some things were better left unknown. The next morning brought even more confusion. Katerin's personal maid, Sarah, who had been with her since childhood, was suddenly dismissed from service. When Katerin demanded an explanation from her parents, they told her that Sarah had been caught stealing, but Katerin knew this was impossible. Sarah was one of the most honest people she had ever known. As days passed, more strange things began happening. Letters that were meant for Katerin mysteriously disappeared. Her riding instructor was replaced without explanation. Even her favorite horse, Thunder, was moved to a different stable, and she was told that he had become too wild for her to ride safely. The breaking point came during a formal dinner with visiting nobles from the neighboring kingdom of Astoria. Katerin was seated between two elderly lords who spoke only of hunting and taxes, topics that bored her greatly. She noticed that Wylan kept glancing at her throughout the meal, his expression unreadable. When she tried to catch his eye to share a silent joke, as they usually did, he quickly looked away. After dinner, as the guests moved to the ballroom for dancing, Katerin saw Wylan slip away through a side door. She followed him, her heart pounding with worry and confusion. He was heading toward the castle's old tower, a part of the building that had been sealed off for years due to structural damage. Katerin had always been curious about the old tower. As children, she and Wylan had often wondered what secrets it might hold, but they had never been brave enough to explore it. Now, watching her brother disappear through the heavy wooden door, she felt both fear and determination rising within her. She waited several minutes before following, not wanting Wylan to hear her footsteps on the stone stairs. The tower was dark and cold, with only thin beams of moonlight filtering through narrow windows. As she climbed higher, she could hear voices coming from above. One was definitely Wylan's, but the other was unfamiliar. When she reached the top floor, She hid behind a pillar and listened carefully. Wylan was speaking with a woman whose voice was low and urgent. Katerin couldn't see the woman's face clearly in the dim light, but she appeared to be wearing a hooded cloak that concealed her features. "The princess is becoming suspicious," the woman was saying. "She's asking too many questions about the changes in the castle. We need to act soon, or she might discover everything." "I won't let you hurt her," Wylan replied, his voice filled with an emotion that Katerin had never heard before. "Katerin is innocent in all of this. She doesn't know anything about our father's past or the real reason why our mother died." These words hit Katerin like a physical blow. Their mother had died of a fever when Katerin was 10 years old, or at least that's what she had always been told. What did Wylan mean by the real reason? The woman's laugh was cold and bitter. "Innocent? Your sister carries the bloodline just as much as you do. She has the same abilities that made your mother so dangerous to certain people. The same abilities that eventually killed her." Katerin pressed herself closer to the pillar, her mind racing. What abilities were they talking about? She had never displayed any special powers or talents beyond what was normal for a princess of her education and upbringing. "The Council of Shadows knows about her," the woman continued. "They've been watching her for months. If we don't act first, they will eliminate her just like they eliminated your mother. Is that what you want?" Wylan's response was so quiet that Katerin had to strain to hear it. "What choice do I have? If I don't cooperate with you, they'll kill us both. At least this way, I can protect her for a little longer." "Protection?" the woman scoffed. "You call betraying your own kingdom protection? When the time comes, you'll have to choose between your crown and your sister's life. The ritual requires a royal sacrifice, and your uncle has already made it clear which choice he expects you to make." At the mention of Uncle Aldrich, everything began to make terrible sense. The private meetings, the dismissed servants, the strange changes in the castle. It was all connected to some larger conspiracy that involved her brother, her uncle, and this mysterious woman. Katerin realized she was in more danger than she had ever imagined. Whatever was happening, it was clear that powerful people wanted her dead, and somehow her own brother was involved in the plot against her. The worst part was not knowing who she could trust or where she could turn for help. Katerin barely slept that night after overhearing the conversation in the tower. Every sound in the castle seemed threatening. Every shadow appeared to hide an enemy. She lay in her bed, staring at the ceiling and trying to make sense of what she had learned. Her mother hadn't died of fever. There was something called the Council of Shadows that wanted her dead. And somehow, her brother Wylan was caught in the middle of it all. When morning came, Katerin made a decision that would change everything. She would not wait for others to determine her fate. If there were secrets about her family and her own life, she would uncover them herself. The first step was to learn more about her mother's real death and these mysterious abilities that supposedly ran in her bloodline. The castle's library had always been Katerin's favorite place, but now she approached it with a different purpose. Instead of reading stories and poetry, she began searching through historical records, family documents, and ancient books about royal bloodlines. She had to be careful not to attract attention from the librarian, Master Cornelius, who reported everything to her father. After hours of searching, Katerin found something interesting in a dusty book about the magical bloodlines of ancient kingdoms. The book spoke of certain royal families who possessed the ability to communicate with nature itself, to understand the language of animals, to sense changes in weather patterns, and to heal others through touch. These abilities often skipped generations and were more common in daughters than sons. As Katerin read, memories began flooding back. She remembered times when she had known things she shouldn't have known, like when Thunder, her horse, was injured before anyone else noticed, or when she had felt her mother's sadness even when the queen was smiling. She had always thought these were normal feelings that everyone experienced, but now she realized they might be something more. The book also mentioned something called the Council of Shadows, described as a secret organization that had existed for centuries. Their purpose was to eliminate anyone with magical abilities who might threaten the established order of power. They believed that people with supernatural gifts were dangerous and unpredictable, and they have been responsible for the mysterious deaths of many nobles throughout history. Katerin's hands trembled as she read about the council's methods. They rarely killed their targets directly. Instead, they preferred to use poison, arranged accidents, or manufactured illnesses that left no trace of murder. They also recruited family members to betray their own relatives, using threats and blackmail to ensure cooperation. Everything was starting to make horrible sense. Her mother had possessed these abilities and had been killed by the council. Now, they were targeting Katerin because she had inherited the same gifts. But what was Wylan's role in all of this? Was he trying to protect her, or was he helping their enemies? That afternoon, Katerin decided to test her suspicions about her abilities. She went to the castle gardens where Thunder was now kept in a new stable. As she approached, the horse immediately became excited, neighing and stamping his feet in a way that the stable hands had never seen before. When Katerin placed her hand on Thunder's neck, something extraordinary happened. She could suddenly sense the horse's emotions and thoughts in a way that was clearer than ever before. Thunder was afraid and confused because he had been separated from Katerin. He could also sense danger in the castle, though he couldn't understand what kind of danger it was. But there was something else. Thunder's memories showed her images of the night her mother died. The horse had been in the stable below the queen's bedroom window, and he had heard sounds that didn't match the official story of a peaceful death from fever. There had been struggling, muffled voices, and the smell of something bitter and unnatural in the air. This confirmation that her mother had been murdered filled Katerin with both rage and determination. She would not let the same thing happen to her without a fight. But first, she needed to understand exactly what Wylan was planning and whether there was any way to save them both. That evening, Katerin made another discovery that changed everything. While searching through her mother's old belongings, which had been stored in the castle's basement, she found a hidden compartment in an antique jewelry box. Inside was a letter written in her mother's handwriting, addressed to my beloved daughter, when you are old enough to understand. The letter revealed the full truth about their family situation. Queen Elena had known about the Council of Shadows and had been hiding her abilities for years. She had also discovered that King Theron was not Katerin's real father. Katerin's biological father was a man named Marcus, who had been Elena's childhood friend and possessed even stronger magical abilities than she did. Marcus had been killed by the Council when Katerin was just a baby, and Elena had married King Theron to protect herself and her daughter. Theron had agreed to the arrangement because he needed a queen, and he had promised to keep Elena's secrets in exchange for legitimizing his rule. But the protection hadn't lasted. Lord Aldrich had discovered the truth and had made a deal with the Council of Shadows. If he helped them eliminate Elena and Katerin, they would support his claim to the throne after King Theron's death. Elena had learned about this betrayal just days before her own death, but it had been too late to escape. The letter ended with instructions for Katerin. Hidden beneath a loose stone in the castle's foundation was a bag containing gold, maps, and the name of a safe house where she could find allies. Elena had prepared this escape route years earlier, hoping her daughter would never need to use it. But there was one more shocking revelation in the letter. Wylan was not King Theron's son either. He was the biological child of Lord Aldrich, placed in the royal family as an infant to ensure that Aldrich's bloodline would eventually inherit the throne. However, Wylan had never been told this truth, and he believed King Theron was his real father. This explained so much about recent events. Wylan wasn't betraying Katerin by choice. He was being manipulated by his real father, who was using threats against Katerin's life to control him. Lord Aldrich had told Wylan that cooperating with the council was the only way to keep Katerin safe, but in reality, Aldrich was planning to sacrifice them both once he secured his position as king. Katerin realized that she had to warn Wylan about their uncle's true intentions, but she also had to be very careful about how she approached him. If Wylan discovered that she knew about the conspiracy, it might force Aldrich to accelerate his plans and put them both in immediate danger. The next day, Katerin decided to take a huge risk. She waited until Wylan was alone in the castle's armory, cleaning his sword as he often did when he was troubled. She approached him casually, pretending to be looking for a book that she had left somewhere in the castle. "Wylan," she said carefully, "I've been worried about you lately. You seem so sad and distant. Is there anything I can do to help?" For a moment, Wylan's carefully controlled expression cracked, and she saw the pain and fear he had been hiding. "Katerin," he said quietly, "if I told you that your life was in danger, and that the only way I could protect you was to do something terrible, would you trust me?" This was the opening she had hoped for. "I would trust you with my life," she replied honestly. "But I would also want to know the whole truth so that we could face the danger together the way we always have." Wylan looked around nervously, then motioned for her to follow him to a more private location. They ended up in the castle's old chapel, a place that had been abandoned since their mother's death and was rarely visited by anyone. "What I'm about to tell you will change everything," Wylan said, his voice shaking with emotion. "Uncle Aldrich has told me things about our family that I never knew. He says that Mother didn't die of fever, and that there are people who want to kill you because of abilities you inherited from her." Katerin pretended to be shocked by this information, though she was actually relieved that Wylan was finally being honest with her. "What kind of abilities?" she asked. "I don't completely understand it myself," Wylan admitted. "Something about being able to communicate with animals and sense things that other people can't. Aldrich says it's a form of magic that some royal bloodlines carry, and that there's a group called the Council of Shadows that sees people like you as a threat. And what does Uncle Aldrich want you to do about it?" Katerin asked, though she already suspected the answer. Wylan's face filled with anguish. "He says that if I help them capture you, they'll make sure you're not killed. They just want to keep you somewhere safe where your abilities can't cause problems. He says it's the only way to save your life." Katerin felt her heart breaking for her brother. He was trying so hard to protect her, not realizing that he was actually helping the people who wanted to destroy them both. She knew she had to tell him the truth, even if it meant revealing that she had been spying on his private conversations. Katerin took a deep breath and made the most important decision of her life. She reached into her dress and pulled out their mother's letter, the one that revealed the truth about everything. "Wylan," she said softly, "I need to show you something that will change how you see our entire family." As Wylan read the letter, his face went through a series of emotions: confusion, shock, anger, and finally, a terrible understanding. When he finished, he looked at Katerin with eyes full of pain and rage. "Aldrich is my real father," he whispered, "and he's been lying to me this whole time. He told me that helping the council was the only way to save you, but really he's planning to kill us both." Katerin nodded. "That's not all, Wylan. I've been developing the abilities Mother wrote about. I can communicate with thunder and sense things that others can't. And I overheard your conversation in the tower 2 nights ago." Instead of being angry that she had spied on him, Wylan looked relieved. "So you know about the woman who's been meeting with me. Her name is Vera, and she claims to work for the council. She's been telling me that if I don't help them capture you by tomorrow night, they'll kill both of us immediately." "We can't trust anything she says," Katerin replied firmly. "According to Mother's letter, the council never keeps their promises. They eliminate everyone who knows about them, including their own allies." Wylan stood up and began pacing around the small chapel. "Then, we're both going to die anyway. Even if we run, they'll find us eventually. The council has resources and connections all over the kingdom." But Katerin had been thinking about this problem since reading her mother's letter. "Maybe not," she said. "Mother mentioned allies at a safe house. And there might be other people with abilities like mine who are also fighting against the council. We don't have to face this alone." "What about Father?" Wylan asked. "Does he know what Aldrich is planning?" This was one of the most painful parts of the whole situation. "I think Father knows more than he's told us," Katerin said carefully. "He might be just as trapped as we are. If he tries to oppose Aldrich openly, the The council might kill him too. They spent the next several hours planning their escape. Using the information from their mother's letter, they located the hidden bag of supplies beneath the castle's foundation. It contained enough gold to travel comfortably, detailed maps of safe routes through neighboring kingdoms, and the address of a woman named Isabella who had been Elena's friend and ally. But their planning was interrupted by urgent news from one of the castle's young servants, a girl named Emma who had always been kind to Katerin. Emma found them in the chapel and delivered a message that made their blood run cold. "Your Highnesses," Emma said breathlessly, "Lord Aldrich has announced that there will be a special ceremony tomorrow evening to celebrate Princess Katerin's upcoming engagement. All the nobles in the kingdom are being invited, and no one is allowed to leave the castle until after the ceremony." Katerin and Wylan exchanged worried glances. There had been no discussion of any engagement, and the timing was too suspicious to be a coincidence. "Did he say who I'm supposed to be engaged to?" Katerin asked. Emma shook her head. "No, Your Highness. But there are strange preparations happening in the Great Hall. They're setting up some kind of altar, and Lord Aldrich has ordered that all the windows be covered with black cloth." This sounded nothing like a normal engagement ceremony. It sounded more like the ritual that Vera had mentioned during her conversation with Wylan, the one that required a royal sacrifice. "We have to leave tonight," Wylan said urgently, "before they have a chance to trap us in whatever they're planning." But escaping would be more difficult than they had hoped. When they returned to their rooms to gather essential belongings, they discovered that guards had been posted outside their doors. The guards were polite but firm. They had orders from Lord Aldrich to ensure that the prince and princess remained safe in their rooms until the ceremony. Fortunately, Katerin had spent years exploring the castle's secret passages and hidden tunnels. As children, she and Wylan had discovered several routes that connected different parts of the building, including one that led from the basement to the stables. That night, after the castle had grown quiet, Katerin used her abilities to communicate with Thunder and the other horses. She asked them to create a distraction by making noise and acting restless, which would draw some of the guards away from the main building. The plan worked better than she had expected. Thunder's intelligence was remarkable, and he managed to coordinate with the other horses to create enough commotion that several guards rushed to the stables to investigate. This gave Katerin and Wylan the opportunity they needed to slip through the secret passage and escape the castle. But their freedom was short-lived. As they made their way through the forest surrounding the castle, they realized they were being followed. Vera and several armed men were tracking them through the woods, and they were closing in fast. "This way," Wylan whispered, leading Katerin toward a rocky area where the terrain would make it harder for horses to follow them. But even on foot, their pursuers were skilled hunters who knew the local landscape well. Just when it seemed like they would be captured, help arrived from an unexpected source. A group of cloaked figures emerged from behind the rocks, surrounding Vera and her men. The leader of these mysterious allies was a woman with silver hair and eyes that seemed to glow in the moonlight. "Princess Katerin," the woman said in a voice that was both gentle and commanding, "your mother asked us to watch over you. I am Isabella, and these are my companions. We've been waiting for this day for many years." The confrontation that followed was swift and decisive. Isabella's group had abilities similar to Katerin's, but they were trained fighters who had been battling the Council of Shadows for decades. Vera and her men were quickly overwhelmed and captured. Under questioning, Vera revealed the full scope of Aldrich's plan. The ceremony the next evening wasn't just meant to sacrifice Katerin. It was designed to transfer her abilities to Aldrich himself through a dark ritual that would make him the most powerful ruler in the kingdom's history. Wylan would have been killed immediately afterward to eliminate any potential challenges to Aldrich's rule. "Your uncle has been planning this for over 20 years, Isabella explained as they traveled to her hidden compound deep in the mountains. "He arranged for your mother to marry King Theron, knowing that any children she had would inherit powerful abilities. He also arranged for Wylan to be placed in the royal family, ensuring that he would have control over the next generation of rulers. Over the following days, Isabella taught Katerin how to properly use her abilities and how to defend herself against the council's attacks. Wylan learned about his true heritage and began training with weapons and tactics that would help him fight back against their enemies. But they couldn't hide in the mountains forever. Word reached them that Aldrich had declared both prince and princess dead, claiming they'd been killed by bandits during an attempted escape. He had also convinced King Katerin to name him as heir to the throne, promising to avenge the deaths of the royal children. The final confrontation came during Aldrich's coronation ceremony. Katerin and Wylan, along with Isabella's fighters, infiltrated the castle during the celebration. Using their knowledge of the secret passages, they were able to reach the Great Hall without being detected. When Aldrich was about to place the crown on his head, Katerin stepped out of the shadows and revealed herself to the assembled nobles. The shock and confusion in the hall was immediate and overwhelming. "Lord Aldrich," Katerin announced in a clear, strong voice, "you stand accused of murdering Queen Elena, conspiring to kill the royal heirs, and betraying the kingdom to foreign enemies." The evidence they had gathered was overwhelming. Documents found in Aldrich's private chambers proved his connection to the Council of Shadows. Vera, under the influence of Isabella's truth-compelling abilities, confessed to everything in front of the entire court. King Katerin, who had been deceived and manipulated for years, finally learned the truth about his family and his brother's betrayal. His anger was terrible to see, but his grief for his wife and the children he had tried to protect was even more powerful. In the end, justice was served. Aldrich and his conspirators were imprisoned and tried for their crimes. The Council of Shadows, exposed and weakened by the loss of their key allies in the kingdom, retreated to plan their strategies elsewhere. Katerin chose not to return to her life as a princess in the traditional sense. Instead, she established a new organization dedicated to protecting people with magical abilities and fighting against those who would persecute them. Wylan, despite learning that he wasn't truly royal blood, was adopted officially by King Katerin and trained to become a wise and just future ruler. The dispute between Prince Wylan and Princess Katerin had never really been a dispute at all. It had been a desperate attempt by two young people to protect each other from forces they didn't fully understand. In the end, their love for each other and their willingness to sacrifice everything for family became the very thing that saved them both and brought peace to their kingdom.